All right, welcome, internet friends and family. We're going to do another Snacktivity today, and we are joined by Michael and Sydney.
Spaghetti.
So we're going to, for our Snacktivity today, as Sydney was saying, we're going to make spaghetti. Now, in this time of the virus and everything, some things are getting really hard to buy. One of which is pasta. And so we're going to make spaghetti, but we're going to make it from scratch.
Homemade spaghetti.
This is a fun activity that you can share with your family.
Hug.
So for this recipe, this is going to be a meat sauce spaghetti. So we're going to use some meats. The first one is we're going to use some mild Italian sausage. If you want a little bit more kick, you can use a hotter sausage, or when we do the spices, you can always put pepper into it, like cayenne or a chili pepper. You can also use a ground beef, but for us, we really like to grind our own. So we got some sirloin, we got some chuck, and we got some short rib. So we're gonna take those apart, cut them up into cubes, and grind them, and create our meat base. For our sauce, we have two large cans of whole tomatoes. This is going to be a fun thing for kids because we're going to get in there with our hands and squish them up. You can always cut some time and buy the chopped tomatoes or diced or crushed. We also are going to use some puree. Puree is different than the sauce in that it has a lot of natural flavor and it's a little bit thicker. And then, so we have 3 cans of that. And then we also have 1 can of tomato paste. We're going to use some thyme. We're going to use some fresh ground pepper. I used a grinder, for a spice grinder, to do up some black pepper, some cumin, oregano, rosemary, some onion powder. We're going to use some Thai basil just to add a little bit of uniqueness, some bay leaves, and then some red wine. So this is the parent side of it. We're going to use some Chianti red wine because it's nice and fruity, and that will go nicely with adding some flavor and bringing out some flavor of the meats and sauce. So the first step in our preparation is we're going to prepare the meat, which means that since our Italian sausage is already ground up, we're just going to set that off to the side. But we do still need to prepare our ground beef. And so we're going to get out our mixer with our grinding attachment, and we're going to cut up this meat and grind it up. And our hamburger meat or ground beef is now prepared. We did a double grind so that the fat would actually be more evenly distributed, and it's the molecules or fibers of the meat are actually broken up a little bit more, so that it actually is a little bit more flavorful, in my opinion. If you do grind your own meat, make sure that the meat is cool, not necessarily frozen, but cool. And some people do take the grinding parts for your mixer and they put them in the refrigerator too to kind of keep them cold. You do want to keep checking your meat if you're doing a lot of grinding as it's coming out to make sure that it's not hot, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to cook it. All right, so the first fun part is done. That's having your kids help you grind the meat if you're doing that, and prepare that meat. The second thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start to prepare the sauce. And so we have 2 cans here of whole tomatoes. These tomatoes have been slightly cooked a little bit, enough so that the skin has been able to been peeled. It says naturally steam peeled, so they've been steamed a little bit so that way they can be peeled. So what we're going to do is we're going to get these into a bowl, and this is the second fun part for our kids, is that we're going to get our hands a little bit messy, and we're going to squish these tomatoes so that they are quote unquote crushed. That's why I was telling you before that if you want to save some time, unfortunately it does take away some of the fun for kids, but you can go and buy crushed tomato sauce, in which case it has the crushed tomatoes already. We're going to take the whole ones and we're going to have some fun and we're going to crush them ourselves. Okay, so we're going to get Sydney and Michael over and we're going to put these in a bowl and we're going to start doing some crushing. All right, so when we're cutting this is the adult part. Make sure that careful with your fingers around the sharp metal. Kind of keep that away from your children because that is very sharp. So what we're going to do here is we're going to open these up and then we're going to get messy.
This time we're going to get super messy.
That's right. We're going to get super messy. All right, we're going to move these really sharp things off to the side. And we're going to pour these whole tomatoes into a bowl. We're just going to do one at a time. So that way we can...
Tomato.
We don't overwhelm the bowl. And then we're going to get in there with our hands. And we're going to start to squish them. Yeah, so kind of get in there, City, and crush those tomatoes. Use those hands and crush them.
I'm crushing them.
There we go. Exactly. Now, the reason why I like to do this versus buying the already crushed is the buying one, when you buy it already crushed, those have been crushed via processors, machinery. And so you don't get they're all uniform and the texture isn't quite the same. It's kind of like if you have a salad that you cut with a knife versus you rip the leaves. It provides a different texture if you do it with your hands. So with this, we're going to crush these tomatoes with our really powerful hands. So we got Michael and Sydney now squishing them up.
Because I was building a skyscraper.
Yeah, on Minecraft. But we got them here.
I'm
Slowly. We want it squish slow, right? Slow and methodical. Look at Michael. See? And so notice now that it's getting a lot thicker.
I just got here and I'm almost like halfway done.
Yeah, there you go. So you're doing really good, Sydney. You got most of yours all crushed up. So we're just going to keep going. You want to get that nice and thick. It comes with some tomato sauce, but once you really start crushing these tomatoes, it starts to get thicker as all that pulp gets mixed in with that watery sauce. But we just want to keep going slow. And as you can see, it is a messy, but it's a fun, messy thing to do with our family. And it is all crushed up. We crushed up all of it so that now it's nice and thick. So this is kind of like our crushed tomato. And then we'll mix in our puree and our tomato paste here in a moment once we start doing that. Now, a lot of people, what they'll do when they're making their tomato sauce for spaghetti is that they're just going to put all their stuff in at once. One of the things that we learned from other cooks and chefs is to layer our flavors. So the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to move over to the stove and we're going to start heating up our pot. and we're going to put a little bit of oil down in the bottom once it gets hot. And then we're going to start with our beef, and we're going to brown our beef first, our beef and our sausage. Get that nice mixed and browned. Then we're going to drain that off, but we don't want to drain all of the juices off. We want to keep some of those in, because then we're going to saute a chopped onion and then put the spices in as well. So join us in a moment once we get that started. All right, so we are above our stove, have it on kind of medium-high heat, waiting for it, and I can feel that heat coming off of that now. So I'm just going to put in enough olive oil that it kind of somewhat covers the bottom of the pan, all right? And when it's hot, it moves really, really quickly from one side to the other. I have some of our prepared ground beef, so about 1 pound. So I'm going to put that in there. When you put it in, it should make a nice sizzle sound. Because what we want is we want to brown this nice and quick. And then we have 1 pound of our sausage. Remember, this is mild, but if you want a little bit more spice, you can always go with the hot. So we're going to take our wooden spoon here, and we're just going to break that sausage up, mix all that together, because this is going to be our meat. And as this cooks, some of the moisture within this meat, as the fibers break down, it's going to release some fat and other water onto the bottom, and that is what we're going to end up cooking our onion in later. So we do want all that nice fat in there. We're going to stir that up. So you can see it's starting to brown. I'm just going to keep moving that around, because what we don't want it to burn. Okay, we just want it brown. So we want to keep moving it. Oh, that smell is so good. I'm going to put a little bit of some salt in there, and some pepper. You always want to season as we go, every step of the way. You don't need to season or salt too much with the sausage. It has some in it, but we do want a little bit, because that meat that we made had none, so we need a little bit for that. As you can see, it's starting to get nice and brown. I'm going to finish that up, and then we're going to drain it, and I'll bring you back when it's time to do that. All right, so now it's all nice and browned, and so what we're going to do is you can see all those nice juices in there. I'm going to use a strainer here, and we're going to strain it into the juices into one, and then we're going to put the meat into another. That way we can save some of the juice and put it back in. Okay, so we're going to turn off the heat here, and I'm going to hold that tight, and we're going to all right, so we have all of that juice out of there. Nice juice there that we're going to actually use for some cooking. And now we're going to take this meat, we're going to put it in that other bowl, and then we're going to get our onions cut up, and we're going to cook our onion in this same pot. All right, so we have our onion, 1 medium white onion that has been diced. chopped. So we're going to take some of that nice juice and we're just going to put a little bit of it back in there. About the same as if you had just put oil in. And we're going to start up our heat. So get that, again, back up so that's nice and hot. And then we're going to saute our onion. What we just want it so that it's translucent. We don't want to brown it. So this is kind of where we're layering our flavors. So we did our meat first, so that's in there. And then as we put our onion in, that's going to add that flavor to the onion. All right, so we have our pan. We have a little bit of our good juices from our meat in there. As you can hear, it's starting to sizzle, which means it's nice and hot. We have our 1 medium white onion that we chopped up nicely. So now that that's nice and hot, we're gonna start to put that in here. And we should hear that nice sizzle again, which is exactly what we want. We want the heat about medium high again as we saute this. And what we want, again, as I said before, we just want the onion to be translucent. So we're going to spread that out on there. And if you can see in there, the onion's going to kind of absorb, even though it's going to give off some of its own moisture into the bottom, it's also going to absorb all that juice that the meat left out. So we're gonna saute this here real quick, and then what we're gonna do is once that gets to translucent, we're gonna start adding our spices. So we have rosemary, which is a nice aromatic, along with thyme. Got some cumin, some black pepper, salt, some onion powder, and then some oregano, of course, and then some basil. And we're going to put some basil in some Thai basil in at this point, and then once we add the leaves, we'll do some actual bay leaves, some dried bay leaves, and so those will add a lot of flavor to our sauce. This sauce in all will take around 2.5 to 3 hours. So make sure you start in plenty enough time to have it in the evening. So I'll bring you back once all the onion has become translucent and we start to add our seasonings. All right, so they're starting to get going here. We're gonna put in some garlic. I've turned down the heat now that they started to get translucent. We're going to go with a 1 teaspoon of our oregano. We're going to get that in there. 1 teaspoon of our Thai basil. 1/2 teaspoon of our rosemary. Okay, I'm going to put that in there. We're going to put about 1/2 teaspoon of salt and about that of ground pepper as well. And then we're just going to stir that up, let that heat start to break down those bonds and start to release all those good aromatics. Alright. Decided not to go with the onion powder yet. We will put that off to the side to taste here in a little bit. So next we're going to take our meat and we're going to put our meat back into our pan here, our pot. Put that back in like that. Now it still has a little bit of moisture left, so we're going to put that back up to about medium. And what we want is we want to just fold that around so that all those good herbs and garlic and onion get all nicely mixed in with that meat. Now, next spot that we're going to do is we're going to start putting the sauce in there. So we're going to turn this, now that we're mixed in, we're going to take that aside, or turn that down, and then we're going to start to very slowly, so that we don't splatter, we're going to start mixing in those whole, or now crushed, tomatoes, right? So we want to get all the in there. And then we're going to put in the rest of our tomato puree and tomato paste. So we're going to open these up. Once I get these in, then I'm going to turn our heat back up so that it starts to cook. And then once I start seeing it bubble, we're going to want to turn it all the way down to a simmer. And that's when our timer starts, because it's going to simmer for about 2 to 2.5 hours. We're looking for a change in the color from kind of this bright, almost ketchup reddish type thing to more of a richer red, which we will see when we get done in 2 hours. But first things first, we need to finish putting the rest of these in. So I'm just emptying out this puree using a spatula to make sure to get all that good stuff out of the can. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and push that notification bell so that you get any new videos that come out. And along with that, make sure that you are recycling and reusing. All these cans that we're using, we actually rinse out and we either put in the recycle or we reuse them. They can be good little temporary potting plants, so long as they are cut so that you don't cut yourself on them. Or you can use them for other crafts as well. And one of the fun things for your kids is you can, if you have a hammer and a nail and some string, you can actually make an old style telephone. Rinse them out, take a nail and hammer it into one end of each of the cans, and then stretch some string in between through the holes. And what you're gonna then have is when one of them talks into one can, the sound vibrations will go through and be able to be heard on the other. So we see here, we can stir that in and we see some of that meat in there. All right, so now add some tomato paste. Tomato paste is nice and concentrated, has lots of flavor in it, and it'll add a little bit of thickness to that sauce. I mean, it's already pretty thick, but I tend to like my sauces pretty thick. I'm going to come in here and we're going to squeeze that out. Look at all that nice goodness. All right. Okay, so we're gonna get that in there. Mix that up. I'm gonna put that up to medium because we want this to cook. Get it nice and hot. So once we start seeing it bubble, then what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn it down. Look at that. That is just gorgeous. All nice. Got some good amount of meat in there to the sauce. We always want a good ratio. I always get tired of the red sauces that are all tomato and no meat. If you're vegetarian, you can of course substitute meat for a non-meat product. There's all sorts of things out there that can help you out. Vegan, I can't help you because there's going to be lots of butter and other things that we're going to make that I haven't eaten vegan, so you have to look that up and figure out what you need to substitute. All right, we're gonna let that cook a little bit, start to bubble. When it starts bubbling, we're gonna turn that all the way down to simmer and put a lid on it, and we're gonna simmer it for 2 hours. Now, we're not just gonna let it leave. We have to come back about every 15 minutes and stir it. But from here on out, it's just gonna cook. See you soon. All right, so the sauce is now cooking up, and we have my timer here going. We have about an hour and 50 minutes left until it's done. Now, what I want to do is I want to pour some of our red wine here. This is the adult part. I'm going to actually use a little aerator. The whole point of adding anything in a recipe is to add flavor. And so you can do that to a red wine by putting it through one of these aerators. Kind of brings out all that nice flavor. And we want just about half a cup of this Chianti. We want something nice and fruity. So I chose a Chianti since, you know, we're dealing with Italian, might as well deal with an Italian wine. So now that's nice and aerated. We're gonna let that sit. When it's about an hour in, we're gonna put this wine, stir this wine into our sauce. Welcome to part 2. Part 2 is pasta. So I was just at a local grocery store, and unfortunately pasta is still a rarity nowadays, at least at the place I went to, and so we're going to make our own. What that means is that we need some eggs. We want about 6 eggs. We're going to use 4 of them as the full egg, and then 2 of them we just want the yolks, not the whites, the yolks. Then we're going to mix that together with 2 cups of flour, about a half a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of olive oil. And we're going to do that all right here on our tabletop and with our hands, and we're going to get nice and goopy. This is another fun one for kids because it kind of gets them all messy and it's sticky and fun for them to manipulate it to make this dough. So let me do a little bit of magic and let's get started. All right, so now we have our 2 cups of flour. We're using all-purpose. If you want like a lot smoother noodle, you can use a flour called 00, but it's a little bit harder to find, especially nowadays, I'm sure, and it's a lot more expensive. So all-purpose flour works just as well. And then we have our 6 eggs, which is 4 eggs and 2 egg yolks. What we're wanting to do is we're gonna make kind of like a little volcano here. Spread out these walls. Make sure it's nice and even here. Just the kind of person I am. I like it nice and even. Okay, so that out. All right, now we're gonna add our half a teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon olive oil, and then we're gonna do up our egg mixture, eggs here, so that it's in a nice slurry, and start pouring those into our depression. So we got our salt here. This is a 1/4 teaspoon measure, so I'm gonna do 2 of those, just like that. And then I need 1 teaspoon run low in this bottle here, but just perfect. And we're just gonna spread that around. Now you can take like a little whisk or a fork and do up your eggs here. We're just gonna break those yolks. Mix that up. Now this is going to be sticky, guaranteed. So you want to keep your flour nearby, because as it gets really sticky, you're going to want to add little bits of flour here and there. If it gets too dry, if you've added too much flour, you can always add a little more egg that's been watered down. Looks like our egg is ready here. So we're just going to pour in about 1/3 of our egg. Set that off to the side. And then we just use our hands here. And just start pulling from the edge. Getting that egg all mixed in. We're just mixing this up right here in the middle. And so as you can see, this is starting to get all mixed in. So as that gets mixed in, and as you can see, it's starting to get really sticky. So we're going to take the rest of our egg mixture and pour in a little bit more. You can do it all at once. Saw a video of a old Sicilian grandmother do that. But you know, if you've done this for as long as she has, she knows exactly what she's doing, and can handle that. If this is your first time or second time, or you're not as comfortable, then definitely put it in a little bit at a time. You know, once you have a good mixture there, then you can start to, even if it starts to escape, all right, don't panic. You just scoop it back in. Okay, get some flour in there. We're just gonna start to get that all mixed. So as you can see, it's starting to coagulate together, mix together, get all of that flour together. And we're just going to want to fold it over and over and over again as this kind of gets sticky. See, it's getting nice and sticky here. This is the fun part for the kids, you know, because this gets super sticky, and then you can sit there with your hands nice and clean, and you can say, oh, is it sticky? Okay, I'll put some flour on your hands, and that way, you know, you can get to stay nice and clean, but the kids get to have fun and get sticky and play with dough. Okay, so we're gonna keep folding this up, spreading it out, and it's super sticky here. So I'm going to get my assistant to give me a little bit more flour. I will be right back. All right, so this is actually cleaned. So as you can see, it's sticky. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of this flour. We're just going to shake, shake, shake. Okay. Roll it, and then I'm going to press it out, roll it back, press it out, roll it back. It's getting sticky. I'm going to shake, 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 take a little bit of flour out on it, press it out, roll it back, put a little bit more flour. Okay, we're gonna pull that, push that out, roll it back, push that out, roll it back, push that out, making some nice dough here. You just keep it sticky, just put a little bit more flour on it. Roll it up, press it out with your palm, roll it back, press it out, roll it back, you can use a tap method. Okay, don't worry if a glob of flour gets on there. Right now at this stage, we could probably use it because it's still sticky. You can see from my hand. This is why kids are going to love this, okay? Because this is super sticky, super fun. You just keep having them press it out, okay? Once it gets to this stage where it's a little bit more elastic, okay? Okay, you can bring it up. So now I don't need as much flour. Okay, so we're gonna hold it with one finger, press it out with the other. Okay, then we roll it back. Okay, hold it, press. Okay, gets sticky right there in the middle. If you have a sifter, this probably will work too. Okay, roll it back, hold it, press out. Roll it back, and press out. Roll it back, press out. What we want is a nice loaf of dough that that when you press on it, one, it doesn't stick to you, and two, it starts to come back. So, yeah, see how that's starting to come back up? We're getting close. Just need maybe a little bit more flour. This thing's okay. You can use the flour to kind of get some of those goobers off your hands. And we're just going to press, roll back, hold, press, roll back, hold, press. You really want to use your weight on that. Press, roll back. Okay. Because remember, we're dealing with pasta here, so not gonna really overwork this dough, because at some point, once we're gonna let this rest, and then for about 30 minutes in the refrigerator, and then bring it back out, and we're going to start rolling it. At the time we're going to roll it out nice and thin, and then fold it over, and then roll it out again, and keep doing that until it gets nice and thin and long, and then we can cut it up into our strips. Okay, I will bring you back at that point. All right, welcome back. So we got it into a nice thing, and then we wrapped it in saran wrap, nice and tight, and put it in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes. So now it's nice and cool. So we're going to take it out. We're going to cut a little bit off of it, and that's what we're going to use. We aren't going to use this whole thing. We're just going to cut a little slice off. Okay, and then I don't have a pasta roller, so we're going to use old-fashioned rolling pin, and we're going to go from there. It's going to be a little bit more work, but should have some pretty good results. See you soon. All right, so our sauce is looking really good. And now it's time to get our water going, as we have a nice plate of fresh pasta. So I have some water here in a pot. I'm going to do a small batch because I'm just going to do it for my kids here real quick, get them eating. And then I'll do up another one. So in here, I just want to put some salt. And a drizzle of olive oil, and then we'll get this up to heat to roll and boil. Put the pasta in. Pasta should take between 1 and 3 minutes to be done, and then we'll take it out, strain it, or pull it out, put it in a pot or a plate, and then put some sauce on it and serve it up. Bon appetit. All right, so now we are at what's called a rolling boil. So we can kind of see that the water has this bubbling up effect. One of the things that does when we lay in the pasta is that it keeps the pasta moving around. Right? We don't just want to set it in there and forget it. we need it to move around so it doesn't stick. So I'm actually going to put in a little bit more of that, a little bit more salt. Okay, and then we're going to take our pasta and we're going to slowly just lay that in there. The other reason we want it so high is because as we lay in the pasta, it's going to cool off the water slightly. So my noodles are about a foot long. I figured that was going to be about the right length. Again, we want them to keep moving as we lay these noodles in here. And because they're fresh, they won't take long to cook. They will be done in between 1 minute and 3 minutes. There's lots of ways to test if your pasta is done, and that means that it is al dente, has a slight bite to it, isn't mushy but isn't crunchy. It's somewhere in between. One method is to pinch it with your finger. That I think takes a lot of experience. Chefs like Gordon Ramsay does it that way, and some others I've seen them do a silly way of throwing it up on the ceiling or wall and seeing if it sticks. I don't know about you, but I don't exactly want pasta sticking on my walls and ceiling, even though that would probably be fun for the kids. So for me, it is by tasting. You take a small chunk and you bite it and into it and see how it feels in your mouth. Does it feel the way you want it to? And so we're just going to keep moving this around, getting this to cook, and then we're going to test it out, and we'll be back once it's done. All right, so our noodles are now done. Our sauce is done, so now it's time to plate. So I'm going to take a nice plate here. Now, some people like to strain your noodles, but what that does is that gets rid of a lot of this starchy water, and that starchy water is actually really good for our sauce. So I'm going to take up some of our pasta here, and yet some of the water is going to come with it, but we get a nice plate full of that. Yum. And then we're going to scoop up some of this really good sauce. Put that on top. There we go. All right, guys. There it is. A nice plate of spaghetti made from scratch, all the way from the ground beef to the homemade noodles. I hope everybody has a great weekend and happy Mother's Day. Bye.